So welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Megan, for the opportunity to say a few words and share some caregiving resources with guests at this event. My name is Linda, and I'm a volunteer with AARP. Here at AARP New Hampshire, we are focused on the health, financial security, and social connections critical to the well-being of the 50 plus in the Granite State. We carry out our work through targeted advocacy at the state and federal levels, compelling engagement of the 50 plus community statewide, and also serving as a trusted resource for information for our members and the public. I want to welcome you to this virtual gathering, whether you are a new caregiver or an experienced caregiver. Many of us who are not now caregivers will become one with life's unexpected events. We want to be sure that all of you are aware of the many resources available at AARP for caregivers that provide helpful information, articles, stories, and virtual offerings to connect with others. A helpful guide called Prepare to Care can be found at the site and is available in multiple languages and for specific audiences such as veterans and the LGBTQ community. I'll put the link in the chat after I get done. It is very important that caregivers also make time to care for themselves. We are so glad that you are joining us tonight and allowing yourself to take a break and enjoy a fun activity. AARP is here to support you, and we hope you enjoy tonight's creative night in. In just a minute, I will begin to record, well, I just already recorded the event, and it will be available in a few days. So I know there was some questions in the chat about that. I will put the address for where you find it in YouTube also in the chat. I ask that you also mute yourself. And I guess since this is a webinar, you won't need to do that. But if you do have questions, please put them in the chat and I will be sure and pass them on to Megan. And I know she checks periodically as well. So I'm certainly excited to see what we're going to make tonight. And Megan, with that, I'll let you take it away.
That sounds great. Everyone, I believe I have pinned my screen. Linda, we had some questions about which screen was showing. So thank you so much for the quick overview. Folks, use the chat. Let me know if you can see my screen now. But Linda, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about AARP New Hampshire and the resources that everyone has access to them. Sometimes it's really helpful to have a reminder of what's available. She will be posting several resources right within the chat window. If you're not familiar with the AARP New Hampshire resources, I encourage you to take a look. They're absolutely tremendous, no matter where you are, within the caregiving journey. And there's also a ton of other events I encourage you all to check out as well. Terrific. Looks like folks can see the screen now. But I want to welcome everyone. Linda, thank you again. And she'll be here to maybe paint with us along the way tonight and certainly answer any other AARP New Hampshire related questions. But I'll go ahead and introduce myself. For anyone that hasn't joined my paint classes before, it's so nice to meet you, and I'm so glad you're here, taking a little bit of time for you. My name is Megan Van Wart, and I am based in Vermont, north of Burlington, fairly close to Canada. I absolutely love working with our friends here at AARP New Hampshire to offer you all an opportunity to really unwind and take some time for yourself, but also to practice your creativity. And I did not say, become an artist here in one night, but it's a really fun way to play with some paint, kind of get into the fall season here. Linda and I were talking about how, wow, it's September already. And then I said, Linda, it's September 11th already. It has happened so fast. So a warm welcome to you. I'll do a quick overview of the supplies that I'm using tonight and how our supplies work really moving forward in these classes. So I'm painting on acrylic paper tonight. You can paint on canvas, paper, anything you want. You could paint on rocks during tonight, any class. You could always do that. It's always fun. I'm using acrylic paints. I use really basic acrylic paints for this class because I want to make these classes as accessible and easy for everyone as possible. So whenever you come to any of our classes, just as long as you have blue, yellow, and red, you're good to go. And black and white will help darken and, lighten things. If you happen to have one of those fancy, 12, 16 paint color sets, yes, perfect. Just bring them all. But in my classes, I always teach you how to mix and blend colors along the way, which is a really helpful thing. Okay. I have a range of brushes. I have kind of small, medium, and large. My large is, I use for kind of the background area. And it's really like a medium-sized brush, but having a couple detailed brushes for some of the smaller areas is helpful. And having something in between is a good range. So I just have basic acrylic craft brushes you can get anywhere. You can get them at the dollar store, you can get them at Michael's or a craft store, anywhere you wish, okay? Nothing fancy is required. I do have a pencil for tonight's class, so if you don't have a pencil handy, see if you have one around your home or in your office that you could use for tonight's event. In addition to the brushes, the paints, and something to paint on, you always want a cup of water to rinse your brushes. Always a paper towel for any messes, whether you stick your finger in paint or you happen to knock over your entire water cup. Like, these things happen. Just be prepared. Maybe have an extra like me, you never know. And something to mix colors on. Most classes I use like a paper plate. You could use a small salad plate. If you're using acrylic paints, it's going to come off of that. So really use whatever you have on handy. The size lead of my pencil is it's a 0.7 millimeter. It's just I use a regular I use a mechanical pencil just because it gives me a little bit more fine detail, but you can use any pencil you wish. Nothing fancy there. And then I have a couple leaves that I've gathered throughout my yard, which is quite fun. Tonight's inspiration is this beautiful, I'm calling it Fall in Love. I always love choosing September and October style classes. I always love doing a fall leaf of some kind. And this one's really quite easy and it's colorful. So it should bring you all a lot of joy within this process. I have a small printed version here, so you can kind of take a look at it. And you get to decide the orientation of your leaf. So as you can see down here, I'm kind of turning this. So you can play with what you want your orientation to be. It's something for you to think about as we get going, okay? And I'll think about that too. But most importantly, just show up, be yourself. We're here to have a good time. I'm here to help you along the way. And we'll go ahead and get started. So one of the first things that we're going to do is I'm going to move these leaves off my canvas. We're going to paint the background and we're going to work our way forward. So I'm going to take my biggest brush and I'm going to grab my palette, my plate, and I'm going to put some blue on my plate. So I'm going to put a little bit of blue over here. This is fairly like light in color. This is kind of like, I don't want to say like an ocean blue, but it's kind of like a mid-tone blue. It's not too bright, not too dark, not too light either. And then while I'm kind of putting paints out, I'm going to grab my black paint and I'm going to scoop a little bit of my black paint on my plate in a different area. You don't need too much. I'm just going to clean my water brush. And maybe I'll grab a little bit of white too. Let's just grab a little bit of white and a little bit of black and kind of set ourselves up for success here. One of the things in these classes, you know, based on the size of the canvas that you're using, is you need a lot of paint, which is kind of neat. In most of my classes, I use 11 by 14 canvas boards, or paper, because I like to put them in frames and hang them in my studio, which is really quite fun. I encourage you all to check that out, or consider it yourself anyways. But I was going to clean off my brush. And we're going to paint the whole background blue. So the composition of our art tonight is kind of a leaf floating in the water. That's the concept. And you can decide the orientation of your canvas. So right now mine is vertical, which is portrait. And I'm just going to mix around my blue paint, kind of get it ready to be used. If you're using a thicker paint, sometimes you can warm it up and break it up by just stirring it around a little bit. This blue paint I'm using is by a company called Reeves, so it's a little thicker. So I always like to stir it around. And I do a little bit of paint management, which is like, how much paint is on my brush? And I'm going to have some fun with how I'm applying this. I'm going to kind of make it look like water a little bit. So we're really just painting in and filling in this whole background. But any way that you want to fill this in, you go for it. So we're going to fill in the whole thing. I like dipping my brush in a little bit of water. And sometimes by using water, it gives you some like white opacity here and there, which might create some different texture for like a water scene, which is kind of neat. We'll add some black, we'll add a little bit of contrast, but we're just filling in this area. So if you want to just paint the whole thing blue, you absolutely could. This is me just having a little fun with making it look a little bit watery. And I did it in kind of a circle because the leaf for me is going to go right in the middle. So don't hesitate just to dip your brush in a little bit of water. Take a couple deep breaths. You can't mess this part up, I promise. We're going to paint the whole background. So a little bit of paint, a little bit of water for me, and I'm just gonna kind of fill this in. And imagine these are like little ripples that are going to be around the leaf. That's kind of a fun concept, right? Dip my brush in a little bit of water. Now, as you get going, one of the things I always like mentioning in these classes is that everyone is attending with different levels of experience. And some of us are a little more detail oriented. Some of us may want to take a little longer. So if I'm going too fast for you, just know I want you to go at your own speed, okay? This class is not about me. It's about you enjoying the process. I'll remind you to breathe. Sometimes when we paint, we hold our breath. And just have some fun. I want you to fill in the whole background. So any way that you, with a little water on the brush, you can create movement here. You could just fill this in. We're just going to paint the whole thing. I don't want to see too much white, but if you have some lighter areas like I do, that's fine. Now, if anyone's using acrylic paint tonight, you can keep in mind that it dries quickly. And typically in our classes, we start with one layer of something and our painting evolves from there, which means we can paint over something we've already done, which is kind of an interesting concept. Sometimes when you don't paint that often, you aren't reminded to the fact that your painting can change. And most artists will do one layer of something and then paint over it and paint on top of it or add another layer to add more contrast. So, or more detail or more depth. So I'm going to paint the whole thing. I'm having fun with my water movement here. You may not like the brush strokes. If you have too much water and you don't like the brush strokes, guess what? You can just put more paint on. That's no big deal. But I like the kind of wobbly water texture I'm getting in. It's kind of fun. And I'm filling in all of this white space. And then we're going to be painting on top of this. We'll be putting our leaf on. We'll be putting kind of water reflection and depth around our leaf. And there's a lot of choices that you can make as an artist along the way tonight. And I always love giving you the opportunity to make your own choices throughout class. And I was alluding to that a little bit at the beginning around some of you may want to follow me, step by step, but I'll always encourage you to kind of think outside the box. This is a no risk environment. Nobody's going and selling their artwork tonight, unless you paint a masterpiece and you really want to, then you go for it. But we're here to have fun. So it's okay to be creative and incorporate your own ideas. So the background is one of those, right? You had a choice of how you want to paint your water. Or if you want to dip your brush in a little bit of water to give it a little bit of opacity or some lighter blues, right? I'm just going to swirl this in here. I'm going to be putting a big leaf here in the middle, so you're not going to see most of this anyways, but I have some fun kind of, it looks like a fourth grader's done this a little bit, but I promise you things actually come together here. Sometimes in our classes, new folks are like, where are we going? This is something that my son or daughter or grandson or granddaughter could do. And I tell you, my 5-year-old, his painting would probably look pretty close to this, but trust the process here. I'm having some fun with some lighter and darker colors.
It's a very pretty blue.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's a little more gray toned on the screen here. In person, it's a little bit more, I guess, brighter, but it's nice. I like the gray tones for sure. Yeah, but it's Blue Lake by Reeves. And this, I didn't mix this with anything. It's just kind of the way it came out of the tube. So we'll give everybody a couple minutes just to paint this background. We're going to be painting a lot on top of this. So, and we'll be adding some darker areas for depth. So one thing to consider as a second step to this is I have black and white on my plate. I'm not going to be adding any whites to this yet. If you wanted to add any whites, you could, but I'm going to have you not do any whites yet. But I am going to clean off my brush and I'm going to make a little bit of a darker blue and or a little bit of a black. So I'm going to take a scoop of this blue and I'm just going to put it next to the blue over here. And I'm just going to grab a little bit of black and I'm going to make a little bit of a darker tone of this blue. Kind of making it into like a grayish blue color. And for me, I wanted it a little bit darker, just a little bit. And I'm sticking the corner of my brush in my black. So it's a little bit of like black paint management there of like, I don't want too much. You can see the color difference on my screen. I'm gonna do a little bit more. And I'm just gonna feather in a little bit of black on the corners. I'm not sure exactly. I'm just kind of doing small, light, feathered-like brush strokes. And it's basically drawing the eye to the center. You could do soft kind of brush strokes like I am. See how it's kind of bringing the eye in? You could do it that way. You could have it be more like chunky brush strokes. I'm just adding in a little bit of black here and there. I might take my brush and kind of just sweep it in a little bit more. Acrylic dries pretty quickly, so I'm just adding a little bit of contrast in the corners, really. That's my intention. I'm just kind of blending it in a little bit with a wet brush. Again, I'm not taking this too seriously. I'm just adding a little bit of darker contrast in those corners. Nothing crazy. Let's see.
Megan, someone is asking if they didn't prep their canvas, is that okay?
Yes. Yep. I don't ever typically prep my canvas in these classes just because they're fairly recreational. Absolutely fine. Yep. Good question. I haven't had that question in a long time. All right. So I'm adding in a little bit of darker contrast here and there, just kind of around the edges, just a little bit. So you can see that I want the eye to be drawn into the center. That's the goal there. So before we can paint a leaf on our canvas, we need the whole thing to dry. So I want you to take the next couple minutes to, I'm not going to do any more detail work here. I am just going to look for really wet spots and I'm kind of just rubbing in any wet spots so they can dry a little bit more quickly. So I'm just kind of running a clean brush over any wet spots, whether it's kind of thick paint or whatnot. So this can dry quickly so we can move to our next step. And that's going to be, we're going to use a pencil and we're going to sketch our leaf. So I want you to be happy with the background. Mine looks like kind of a swirling mess of water with a little bit dark on the edge. I'm happy with this texture. I can always change around the leaf if I want to add or change the blue. I can always do that. But this is just a basic start to water. Definitely looks fluid. And here's our inspiration. So don't touch it if you need to. Some people are like, it's so wet, Megan, do I need a hair dryer? No, you don't need a hair dryer unless you want to go get one. But you can take your hand and wave it around. We have lots of folks joining from all over the country. I want to thank everyone for joining tonight. And Linda did graciously post the AARP New Hampshire YouTube channel where they post recordings of all of their events, which is really neat. So be sure to click on that link and follow and subscribe if you can to the YouTube channel because you'll get notifications when there's new event recordings posted, which is kind of a neat way of kind of staying informed of like what else you could attend in the future, which is kind of nice. Folks from all over, I love this. Colorado, California, New Jersey, Tennessee. That's one of the things I love about these groups is that everybody's from all over the country. The link is, there we go. Thank you, Linda. All right, so Operation Canvas Drying Mode. That's what we're doing right now.
So what I'm doing is I'm posting that link periodically because as it scrolls, people lose it.
Agreed.
So I'll just keep doing it periodically.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hello, Sandra from Utah. Love Utah. Love Salt Lake City. Love skiing out there. All right. So everyone needs a pencil if you have a pencil for our next step. Sometimes in these classes I use Sharpies so you can see the lines of my leaf. I'm going to do a pencil first, but then I might outline it in a Sharpie or a pen for you, just out of courtesy of seeing what's going on. I should have one around here somewhere. All right. So I want you to think about the orientation of the leaf. So this is our inspiration. If I have more of a vertical canvas like this, I could have my leaf kind of positioned, in the middle, up here with my hand as the leaf. You can kind of figure out what angle you might want it, and then the stem will kind of come down. So the middle of the canvas is kind of like the bottom side, right, of the leaf. If you wanted to turn your leaf this way, you could. The neat thing about painting is you can just spin your canvas around and pick out what orientation you want after. But the size of the leaf and like how you position it is basically the decision that you want to make. My leaf is probably going to be the size of my hand, which is actually pretty funny. We all have different size hands, so take that with a grain of salt here. But I grabbed lots of leaves from Vermont, and they're all different shapes and sizes. Now, these leaves are obviously too small, but leaves can be hard to draw because they're fairly proportionate, like from a left to the right side, the number of points and things. So I went outside and I was looking for leaves. And I think I like this leaf, the shape the best. It's not my prettiest leaf, but I like that there are 1, 2, 3 main points. And I like that there's 2 distinctive points down here. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a dot once your canvas is dry. We're going to put a dot on where you want the tip of the leaf to be. So if I use my hand as guidance, and I'm doing the top tip of the leaf, maybe I use my index finger and I'm just going to put a dot up here. This is where I want the top of my leaf to be. So I did a small dot here. And again, I'll use a Sharpie as I get going. And then I want you to do 3 other dots on where you want your next point to be. So I may do it as like a wide triangle. Let's see here. So if I have a pretend kind of triangle here of the tips of these leaves, I might move this dot over a little bit. Let me grab my Sharpie. I'll do that out of courtesy here. Let's see here, but do 3 dots in a kind of a triangle form, and then we'll do 2 dots below for the other leaf points. Here we go. So I'm going to do a Sharpie. I'm just going to be courageous to show y'all. So I'm going to do a dot up here. And I'm going to do, again, if my hand is the leaf, I always love living my life on the edge here in these classes. I'm going to do another dot over here to show you. And I'm going to do another dot over here at the other edge. So you have a 1, 2, and 3. We're going to kind of connect these as we go. So there's that. And then that's the main 1, 2, 3 leaves. And then there's 2 smaller points down here. If we hold this up again, so there's 1, 2, and 3, and then there's 2 smaller points that are kind of tucked in, more narrow. And again, I'm just going to be a little bit courageous with my Sharpie here. There. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The other 2 lower dots are down here, if you can't see it because of the lighting. There we go. It's a little bit better. There's my 5 dots. And then if I want to find where the center is, like on the bottom, I could just go in between these 2 lower dots and just do a little bit of a center dot here. That's kind of where the stem will start. So if I want to have fun, well, I could always bring this down too. But if I want to do my stem, I could just kind of draw a stem in here just to show you. And I could always bring this further down if I need to. But this is the fun part. You can kind of pick the top leaf, and we're going to do, if you look at the top leaf here, there's 1 major point here, but there's kind of 2 primaries about halfway down. So if I did 1 dot here, and then I'm going to come about halfway, if you do the full leaf down, there's kind of 2. So if I pick my main dot and I come about halfway down, And two other little dots. Now you all are using pencil. I'm being wild and crazy here with my Sharpie. I'm going to bring these ones down a little bit. And I'm going to do the same thing with these ones. So if I wanted to have fun and kind of just show you, you can kind of start building this all together. So this is going to kind of make a triangle. So this is going to have a point here and it's going to have a point there. It's going to have that main point, and then you're going to kind of come dip up and down. And I'm just showing you visually. And this one is just going to kind of come in. And I'm changing my dots, but you all can kind of just connecting those here. But you want to create these kind of secondary points along the way. So there's a secondary point there. So it's all about trying to make your leaf look as even as possible, which can be kind of tricky, but just go for it. You can always erase. I am living my life on the wild side here. And just add like a secondary point on each leaf, wherever that might be. And it's okay to erase. I'm sure many of you are erasing along the way. I'm just using a Sharpie so you can see my evolution. And then this one kind of comes out. And I'm just using kind of wiggly lines. We're going to paint this all in. This is just to kind of boost our confidence with regards to structure, right? So there's my leaf. Yeah, it looks kind of like a leaf, but you can see I had these little built-in points along the way. But I had those three primary, so the 1, 2, and 3, and then I did these little mini points kind of coming out on the left and the right for each of these. And then these two down here, they're more narrow. That's why it's helpful to always have something to look at. Now, my leaf could be bigger, but I'm really happy with it. You could always add in more leaves if you want to. So look, I could easily put another little leaf down here if I wanted to, right? So maybe I do that just to show you, right? You know, size. Maybe I'll just throw in another leaf down here just to show you the example. Sometimes leaves, based on the varietal of the tree, they have, you know, different leaf shapes, which I'm sure you all know, like the difference of, you know, not no exacts, but the difference between a birch leaf and a maple leaf, right? These are maple leaves. I'm in Vermont, imagine that. So I just put another little leaf down there just because I had space, right? So one of the things about art that we always do in these classes is talk about spatial kind of awareness when it comes to, and I could even put another little one over here if I wanted to. And I might do that. I might just trace these little dots. Look at this. It's about having balance to your art, and sometimes it's about just understanding the composition and knowing if you want to add something in one place or another in addition. So it's something that we always talk about, but those are the decision choices that you can make along the way. All right. So I want you to get those basic outlines in. You all are using pencils. I was using Sharpie just to show you. And you can see I have lots of lines. It's okay. I'm going to paint over much of this. If you wanted to, you could use black paint right now and kind of outline roughly your pencil marks. You don't have to do that because we're going to do black in some areas anyways. If you wanted to, you could. I'm going to just jump into painting this just due to time. But we'll do more outlining with black and white after, just for awareness. Okay.
So
All right.
Megan, you had somebody that wanted to know whether we can attach an example, and I don't want to stop you now, but sometime.
Oh, no, I can do that. Absolutely. I have it right here. And I have an example of the inspiration here.
So pretty.
It's so pretty. Okay, so don't worry too much like about your leaf shape if it's perfect or not yet, because it can change, I promise, okay? But let's get into some of our beautiful colors. And to do that, we're gonna start with our red. I'm using a crimson tonight, which is kind of like a brick color, like a nice red brick color. Excuse me. And then we're going to be using oranges and yellows as well. So if you happen to have orange paint, you can put a little orange paint on your palette. If you don't have orange paint, we're going to mix it. So I'm going to mix it with you. To make orange, it's red and a little bit of a little red brought into yellow. So I'm just going to grab, I kind of put 2 dollops of yellow because I'm making orange. And I'm just grabbing a little bit of red on kind of a smaller brush to make orange. So I'm just going to have these paints ready so we can kind of bop around from one color to another. So you want to have red, yellow, and orange on your plate. And this looks peachy on the screen, I promise. In person, this is not peachy. It's very much an orange. Let me play with my lighting here. It's more of like a soft kind of Florida orange color. All right. So we're going to start with a little bit of our red. We're going to start with some of the darker colors first. You can paint these any color that you want. So if you love orange flowers, paint them orange. But we're going to work our way from the outside and work our way in. And we're just going to add a little bit of red along the edges. And we're going to start at the top and we're going to do those main 3 points first. We're going to have more yellow on the underside of the flower. So, or underside of the leaf. So if you need to mix a little bit of white with any of these, you can, but have some fun. Grab a small brush of choice. And I'm just putting in, I'm just kind of following some of these points. I'm doing soft, kind of gentle brush stroke sweeps, kind of coming down. It's kind of giving it a little bit of texture, kind of outlining. And this is where you can really play with the leaf shape, right? If you wanted to change something, you could. And I'm just using my red. My red's a little orangey, so that's no problem. And as we kind of get down to the bottom side here, we're going to transition to orange on the edges to give it that rainbow look, that changing of season look, which is really fun. So I'm going to transition. I'm not even going to clean my brush. So crazy of me. I'm going to transition to orange on the edges, kind of blending my red into my oranges. Ooh, you can bring some of that on the inside too. Have fun with this. You cannot do any of this wrong. So have fun with how you're bringing in your colors. If you did other leaves like me, you can kind of go in and just do the red and the oranges first. But just go at your own speed here. Take a couple deep breaths and enjoy the process. I'm just doing kind of small brush strokes. I can come in with a more fine detailed brush to do some of this edging work after if I want to get it really dialed in. If you wanted to do that now, you could just, I could be using a smaller brush if I wanted it to be perfect. I'm not striving for perfection tonight. I'm just having fun. But I'm just doing the red down here. Let me turn this off. It's a little bit better. Just playing with my lighting here. Just doing the reds and oranges first. And just enjoy this process. You all work really hard. You deserve this time just to kind of unwind. And again, a big thanks for AARP New Hampshire for having us. We would not be here without their support. These classes have been popular because they're really for you just to not work too hard, but have some fun, doing something a little different, meeting other people, being a part of this community, to know that you're supported and there's resources that are there for you. I'm just having some fun bringing in some oranges. You can decide how much orange you want to bring in, how far you want to bring in the orange. I'm going to come up here, add a little bit more orange to the top. And I'll probably bring in a little bit more red here and there. Again, it's okay to have layers, right? Absolutely fine. You can always kind of put a little bit of red back on top of the orange. Play with blending. That's a really fun part of tonight's class. It's putting a little orange down, coming back in, putting a little bit of red on top and seeing what happens. I'm just doing soft, gentle brush strokes. I did a little orange, but I'm kind of dusting a little bit more red on top. And you can start to hold a little, you can leave a little bit of the blue from behind space coming in if you wanted to tuck in some yellow at any point. With your yellow, I'm going to encourage you to mix a little bit of white with your yellow. And I'll show you right here. Because sometimes yellow, it's really hard to stand out against blue, like especially if you have a painted background. If you put a little bit of white in it, mine's a little tainted with orange, but it will help it stand out a little bit better. Sometimes your orange will need a little bit of white too. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm just going to bring in, and this is going to look really bright, but I'm going to paint on top of it. It's just kind of holding some of the space. And again, you can paint and you can change this color, but I'm just bringing in a little bit of this yellow color. And again, this is not a bright yellow. I can put bright yellow on top of this once it dries. But you can have fun just using the tip of your brush to kind of paint in the changing of color. And it's about finding the yellow that you like too. Maybe you like this orangish yellow better, right? Just have fun with this. I am gonna bring in this yellowy orange and paint kind of the bottom side of this leaf, this color. If you don't want to do this, you don't have to. It just kind of adds a little bit of brightness to the bottom of the leaf. I'm using the tip of the brush to kind of create some of those pointy, rigid edges. And I love this because everybody's is going to look so different, Linda, in tonight's class. That's one of the best things about tonight's class.
I
Is
know.
everybody's is going to look so, so different.
I want to tell folks that this paint and sip event is the second Wednesday of the month, 6 to 7:30. And if you go to aarp.org/NH, and I'll put that in the chat, you can see a lot of the activities that AARP has, but this would be posted there as we get closer to the next month.
Absolutely. Yep. And always bring whatever supplies you have. You don't need to have expensive paint supplies to join. You could just show up and listen if you didn't want to paint, just to kind of enjoy the experience, or you could just draw maybe. This is really just a creative experience, however you want to be a part of it. We'll always welcome you to join. And you can always bring a friend to join too. That's always really fun. Deborah, my leaf looks like a bat. Okay, Deborah, I would find, it sounds like you have wings. You need to add some smaller wings on the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and re-upload the inspiration in the chat window for a couple folks that have asked for it. Curtis, I've uploaded that for you. So play with adding in a little bit of lighter colors on the underside, and we can even bring in a little bit of greens, but letting things dry. Sometimes colors can get a little bit mucky. Add a little bit of orange or yellows, let it dry, and then you can always come back to it. We will, I'm playing with a lot of the colors right here. And there's a lot of funky brush strokes up in this one. I'm just letting that dry. I'm going to go back in and play around a little bit more. You could do some sweeping brush strokes, but I'm going to let it dry so it doesn't get too mucky or overly blended in color. You can clean your brush along the way. There's some really, some funky, kind of like, I don't want to say it's like spotted, but there's some funky layering that's going on. I'm just going to do some extra dabbing, maybe some smudging with some reds and some oranges. It's kind of fun to have underlying colors. I'm just adding a little bit more oranges and reds on top of some of the yellow, because guess what? The yellow is going to kind of pop through in some areas, which is kind of neat. So it's kind of fun to do a little bit of layering, again, letting things dry, going back in. And we have time tonight for that. We have time to play with some of this texturing and layering. I'm just doing little kind of dashes. You can do some brush stroke sweeps if you want it to blend things together. But I'm really being playful with texture tonight. So just try considering what texture does your leaves have. If you don't paint a lot, you likely have a lot of brush strokes, or you likely have a lot of dots. Try doing some soft, like gentle, like sweeping texture, like a touch and a slight drag, touch and drag, touch and drag, versus like a little point. And you can see I've layered over this, and it's kind of really bringing it to life quite a bit. And you can see some of my underlying textures. So it all takes practice. Have fun. Don't take it too seriously. I'm going to bring in a little bit more of my yellows. I'll work on this leaf up here. I'm going to bring in, again, my yellow on top of that other yellow. I could even bring in some green on the underside of this leaf. And then we're going to use black as a shaded color to go around this. And we'll use white to really highlight the leaf in the water. So we're really just playing with the leaf itself first. If you have multiple leaves like me, then just bop around from one to the other. But take your time. Again, letting something dry and coming back to it. Coming back in with like a little bit of like the orange. Don't hesitate to switch brushes if you need to use a smaller brush. Sometimes just by switching brushes, you'll kind of get a different look. But one of the things about art is just about experimenting with your tools, right? Kind of like when you're in the kitchen, you're like, oh, I really need this knife to do this thing, right? It's just like the brushes. You get familiar with your brushes and you're like, I need this kind of brush. And it's really changing how I do this task, right? Or how I do this texture. So it's very similar in that way. So try changing a brush and just see what happens. So we're just filling in any ways that you wish. I'm using a yellow. I'm using like a lighter yellow. I'm going back and grabbing in some of my orange. I'm just doing some light kind of dotted texturing. Oranges on top of the reds, yellows on top of the oranges. And we're going to be doing some darker contrast outlining around these leaves. So again, don't worry too much about if they're not popping out the way you wish. So I'm gonna let these dry. It's okay to like let something dry and come back to it just for like a preface. It's really an important thing actually with these classes. Because if you need a little bit of a break, you're like, Megan, this paint is starting to mix. I don't know what's happening. Trust me, I've taught hundreds of classes. I've heard these things before. You can stop what you're doing and come back to it. If anybody wants to just take a little breather with me, you can outline your leaves with a little bit of black paint. So I'm gonna let mine dry. Are they done? No. Are they perfect? No, that's okay. So I'm gonna take a little bit of black paint with a small brush, and I'm gonna just do a little bit of outlining. Now you could be very specific where this is the shading or the shadow, but I'm just gonna have some fun. I want you to play with kind of just following the points. You can do a thick outline or a thin outline, and I'm just gonna kind of paint around most of the edges of the leaf. And this will allow your leaf to really just start to come to life. You can really start to see some of those points. I'm doing kind of like jagged brush strokes because these leaves have all these ridges on the edges, kind of like little teeth, right? So you can see I'm just outlining the leaf and it's already starting to kind of bring itself to life. You can also reshape your leaf during this step, which is really nice. If you don't like the way your leaf is shaped, you can just reshape it right now and you can kind of fill in as needed. That won't ruin or hurt anything. I can tell you that right now. But I'm just going to slowly, pointy leaves, So those 3 main points, if you have the 5 points like I do, using the tip of your brush, you can spin your brush. You have a nice point on your brush. That's really helpful. And if you wanted to hold your brush up and down, if you wanted to hold it really close, you could be a little more loose with the hand if you hold it up a little higher. And I'm kind of just going up and down. I'm kind of, as my brush strokes, I'm not doing smooth brush strokes. I'm kind of doing jagged brush strokes to give it that kind of rigid teeth-like look. And the more kind of uneven it is, the more natural these leaves will look, believe it or not. Now you may be joining, some of you are joining late. I did 3 leaves just because I had space to fill. That's how big this one didn't come out like ginormous, like the inspiration. No problem. We're here to have fun. This is our inspiration anyways, so no big deal. But I'm just doing a little bit of a black outline around. You can come in and give your leaf a little bit of a stem with this small brush. It can have a little bit of a bend to it if you wish. We will add a little bit of a brush depth techniques to our stems with a little bit of white or gray. But I have lots of little leaves on here. I'm going to just do this black technique. Jagged, soft brush strokes just around the edges. This is to give the leaf a little bit of shading. Now we could spend easily, 2 hours on tonight's class. We're going to try to keep it to an hour and a half, just due to everybody's schedules. But there's lots of depth techniques we could be doing. We'll do one more depth technique before we add the white, if folks are interested after. But let's outline our leaves first. Get your stems in. If you don't want to use black and you want to use like a dark red for this depth technique, you can absolutely do that. Sometimes folks don't like using black because it's not like a real color. That's fine. I don't argue with that. I'm just coming in and just adding a really light black outline for a little bit of shaded pop. And then we'll add some of our watermarks and our reflection around this after. We're also going to add this cute heart on the inside of the leaf. And we'll add the leaf kind of veins on the inside as well, too, in just a minute. We'll just do one step at a time. Our classes are to not only for you to learn something new, but also just to kind of enjoy the process. We keep it really easy and really lighthearted for you just to enjoy this time for yourself. Because it's hard and there's a lot going on for most of us. And all of our lives are a little different, so we just embrace it for what it is. But you all, with your regards to caregiving, or if you're a caregiver or have been a caregiver, if you're supporting a caregiver, you certainly deserve this time for you. So just take a few minutes, let this dry, outlined it. I love this. Noreen says she's reshaped her leaf 6 times. Noreen, that is so, so common. I think most people have probably reshaped their leaves 6 times.
Dedicated.
Yes, totally. It's very common.
So
So we're just gonna
we've
let
had a
these
few
dry.
people, sorry, we've had a few people join us late, so I just want to mention that I'm going to put in the chat the address for caregiving information. There's a lot of AARP caregiving information. So
Yes.
in case you missed that at the beginning, I'll put the website in.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Linda. So we have our leaves in. I have basic colors on my leaves. My leaves are drying, a very important piece. If anybody wants to try something kind of funky for a little bit of extra depth around these leaves, it's a little bit of a level 2 tip. But what you can do is, grab a clean brush, maybe, a small to a medium-sized brush. And I'm going to make a little bit of a water mix. So I'm putting a few droplets of water right here. And I'm going to take a little bit of black. And I'm going to mix this. I'm going to make a milky consistency. It's kind of a diluted black color. See this? And I'm stirring it around. So it's kind of a diluted, watery black. You can add this Maybe in certain crevices, like where the leaves have points, this is a little bit of an extra shaded technique. So I'm adding it kind of right in here. You can add it in different areas, and it's just kind of, and you can use your finger to smudge it in. You could use your brush. It's just to give a little bit more of a shaded look. See that? Kind of where the water is hitting. Now this is, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. I'm just giving you another kind of trick for consideration. You don't need, if you don't like the way it looks, you could get your paper towel and kind of dab it off. But I'm just going to show you what it looks like. And if you wanted to try it, you could. Just kind of like where one goes to another, where these dips are. You're not going to do it around the whole thing, but you can kind of do it where one point kind of closes in from another. So it's a little bit of a shaded look, a little bit of extra shadow in certain places. You can use your paper towel to do any dabbing. If your paint is kind of thick and heavy over here, for me, it was a little too much black. So you just take the corner of a paper towel and you can just dab it up. Not a big deal. You can also do a little bit of smudging. So it's kind of a fun way to add a little bit of shade, extra shading around your leaf. And you can see how it kind of blends in a little bit, but it stands out as well. And just do a little bit under here. Maybe by the stem on the underside of this leaf coming into the water. Absolutely up to you. If you don't like the way this looks, guess what? You don't have to do it. I'm here just to offer you a tip or technique or suggestion based on your level of interest. But we're also letting everything else dry so we can do all the other detail work. That's really important. So I'm letting my leaves dry so we can add in some of the extra leaf-like detail. So I'm just having fun putting a little bit, and I'm using, you can see the water reflection on my screen because I'm using, this is a water mixture, right? So it's a little, it will take a minute to dry. If you wanted to go all the way around your leaves, you could. It's always fun to experiment when you're painting. Sometimes you got to kind of build up the guts to experiment. That's why I always like talking about it, because there's so many people in this class, even tonight, that have taken this with me. And you kind of start to get outside your comfort zone a little bit and you try new things. The more you take our classes, you try new things, and it's liberating to be like, oh, I tried it. I actually like it. Or this was a little scary and I'm glad I tried it, but I wouldn't do that again. So you kind of figure out your style. You figure out again how to use these tools as brushes to give different techniques and things. So it's a fun part of the process of creativity. For me, it's not showing up too much. It's actually pretty light, so I could kind of go back in and add a little bit more, but I'm not going to go too crazy. But this is just kind of one fun thing I wanted to show you while our leaves are drying, etc. With your black paint and a small brush, we can add this heart in the middle of our big leaf. Now, some of you may have just one big leaf. Some of you may have many like me. But in the middle of this big leaf, I'm going to go ahead and draw my heart with black paint, just an outline. And I'm going to let that dry. Now you're likely to play around with your heart shape. We're going to paint blue on the inside. I love this. One participant said her leaf turned into flowers, and it's beautiful. That is it's so funny. I love that. Happy little accidents. I'm gonna put little hearts in each of my leaves because, hey, why not? This is my painting. I can do what I wish, right? And I'm just having fun with it. And we're gonna let these dry. Once the black is dry, we're gonna add a little bit of blue and a little bit of depth. Like there's a hole, like this is a cutout per se. Okay. So we're gonna let all this dry. And again, it's just about enjoying the process. We'll add more details, I promise. We're gonna let this dry. We'll add lots of additional details to this, but it's one step at a time. And again, everybody's at different points in tonight's class. So just take a few minutes and just go at your own pace. We can even readjust some of the black outlining. It's no big deal. But sometimes you got to let one area dry to be able to add more on top of it. So one area that is dry for us that we can kind of move to is around the edges of the leaves. So I want everybody, if you can put a little heart inside of your leaf or leaves, go for it. We have a little bit of black outlining. We're going to do the white outlining around the leaves next. This is like the water reflection. And pick a brush. I don't know which brush is going to be best for you. I grabbed I don't know, this is probably a number 1 or a 2 brush. I'm going to use this one. It's not the teeniest brush I have, but it's not the biggest one either. You always get your brush a little bit wet and you're going to find your white paint. And we're going to do some white kind of watery outlines around our leaves. And I like to spin my brush on my palette to manage how much paint is on this brush tip. And you can pick wherever you want, but we're going to do some kind of wiggly outlines like this leaf has just dropped onto the water. And I'm just going to start at the top and I'm just going to do some soft, gentle outlines. Now, they don't have to be completely solid lines. They can be soft lines that maybe get a little lighter in color. See, it's not all connected. They're kind of broken up a little bit. It doesn't all have to be bright white either. And I want you to be really light with your hand. And you're gonna do the outer ring is gonna be a little lighter. So less paint. I'm just doing a little tiny bit of paint. Try to have some of these lines a little disconnected. Lean back in your chair and reflect on your work. You can add as much or as little of this reflection as you wish. And with an almost dry brush, you can add in a little bit more as you work your way out. So you can add as much or as little of this reflection. You can also make like a watery mix. So with white and a little bit of water. Look, I'll show you what that looks like. A little bit of a lighter. So you don't have such a bright white. You could use water and white paint to even have like a lighter ring. So you can play with how much paint is on your brush. The water technique works really well. And I'm not going to do much more than that up there. I'm going to kind of rinse and repeat up down here. I have more leaves. But one of the things I love talking about in my classes is a little bit of mindfulness. It's about kind of pausing and reflecting on your work along the way. Sometimes you need to be reminded just to kind of pause, to stand up, to stretch, to take a look. But you kind of want these rings to stay right around your objects so you can kind of see their imprints per se. And you can make these lines bright white. You could add a little bit of water. I did a little bit of both. And then I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop and reflect. We're going to do more detailed work on the inside of our leaves. Wonderful. Yes, and I'm using acrylic paints. Thank you. So I'm gonna let the water rings just kind of dry, but take this time just to play with the base colors of your leaves. So for me, I want to add in a little bit of like lighter yellows in the bottom of my leaves and maybe even a little bit of green. So everybody's going to kind of be at different points during the class. You're going to be doing different things, and that's okay. So take this time to really just kind of refine the leaf colors. I'm just going to bring in a little bit more of a lighter yellow. And kind of get into the zone, and you can play with some of these details. We're letting our black hearts dry. We're going to be adding blue on the inside of these hearts. We're going to keep a little bit of the black showing, but we're going to add blue for, I'm just adding a little brighter yellow down here on the underside of these leaves for a little bit of extra contrast. And I'll probably add in a little bit of green too, but the black hearts are drying, which is good. So you can consider if you want to bring in any additional colors into your leaves. If you want to re-outline your leaves with a little bit more black, you can decide what are the contrasting colors. Do you like having more yellows in your leaves? Do you like the greens? You can kind of pick and choose what you want to bring into these leaves. I think I love this little touch of the green. Let's see if I can bring in a little bit of the green here. It gives it that more like fresh look with a little bit of the green. I'm just going to bring in a little bit and just see what happens here. Like it just kind of fell down. Still fresh from the plant. So I'm just tucking in a little bit of green on these just to be playful. And I love demonstrating my thoughts and my ideas of kind of what comes to me along the way in these classes, because it's not meant for you to do what I'm doing. It's meant for you to kind of lean in and pay attention to what ideas you have, or based on what your favorite colors are during these classes. It's really fun to kind of just stay in tune with you, right? Your preferences. And I was talking to Linda before class. It's such an important thing for me to include with these classes for you, because art is a very individual activity. It's about, learning and doing something on your own and from a creativity perspective. So that means you should really use your favorite colors, incorporate your ideas. But so by talking about it and holding space for it, we'll really encourage you to be yourself and just show up in the most authentic way as possible. Because we're not here to judge you, we're here to support you. And that's AARP New Hampshire certainly saying that too, with regard to the resources and the support they have.
Boy, that green really helped. I like
Isn't
that.
it help a lot? It adds like that true, I don't want to say like a rainbow effect, but I really like it a lot. The classes that I teach are typically in acrylics. However, I do teach, I use watercolors in some of my other classes for fun, really. It's not like a professional watercolor class, but I use similar teaching techniques with watercolor. Of course, it's a different medium, but for AARP New Hampshire, I primarily teach in acrylics. So if there's requests for specific watercolor classes, we could certainly talk about that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and inside of my hearts is now dry. So I'm going to put a little bit of blue. The blue is going to resemble the water. So I'm gonna maybe paint inside of the heart blue, and then maybe we'll bring in a little bit of black after. So I'm going to paint inside of these hearts blue. Leave the black outline. It's important. My lines are a little messy. Don't worry about that. If you need to do 2 coats of blue on the inside of your hearts, don't worry about it. Mine's covering up pretty well, but this is a pretty thick paint. If you need to, if your blue is not covering based on the type of paint you're using, mix your blue to be with a little bit of white. It might be a lighter blue, but then let that lighter blue dry and then put the regular blue back on top if you need to. You can re-outline the black for these hearts as well if you need to after. But just paint the inside of these blue. And it looks like there's these little punches, which is so fun, of hearts inside of our leaves. And this is a great way to immerse ourselves into the fall season. Some of you may not have fall where you live, so this might be refreshing. I'll mail you a leaf from Vermont to give a little bit of nature, which is so fun. But I'm just outlining these, and you can really see that heart cutout is really coming through. We're gonna add a little bit of shaded inside of the hearts. And I love that Grace shared that AARP Wyoming is offering watercolor classes every Saturday for 8 weeks, and it started last week. That's great if folks want to try watercolor. All right. So I'm going to let the inside of those blue dry. And we are going to add in those the veins or like the lines on top of the inside of the leaves as well. So if you wanted to mix maybe like a little bit, you can make a brown if you wanted to. I'm mixing the black with a little bit of orange just to kind of get like a darker color. It's kind of becoming like a darker green. Just find a darker color of choice. That's a little earthy, so it's don't use, you could use just black if you wanted to, but I'm going to use like a brownish orange if I can make it here for that darker color. You could do like a dark red, dark red if you wanted to for the veins of the leaf. I'm just going to start with this color, and if I don't like it, I can always paint over it. I could even add a little bit of red to this brown. That would probably look nice to make it more of a dark brown color. In the inspiration, it's like a dark red, so you can pick and choose what color you want it to be. But I want you to work on whatever part really is meaningful for you. You can work on your leaf coloring. You could work on the water reflection with the whites. I did a first round for each of those, and I'll go back and I'll make modifications along the way. But I'm just showing you if anybody wants to add any of this vein-like color. This is kind of a dark orangish brown, which works. I'm using a small brush and I'm spinning my brush on the side of the palette to have a nice fine point. And you can just do a long skinny line down. Now mine I can't see. So what does that mean? That means I need to make it darker. So I'm going to use black or even a little bit more red. You want to be able to see the lines. You can decide on how discreet or how bold you want those lines to be. I have a darker brown now. But you're gonna do these lines for any of the major points, and they can be floating, or you can kind of start at the top and work your way down. In the inspiration, it's floating, but you kind of just start at the top and you're gonna go right down. And you're gonna connect it to where the stem is. So you can be as like detail oriented and have it be as accurate as possible. I'm just gonna have fun with it. I'm doing these primary lines first, and then I'll do those secondary kind of vein-like lines. Just take your time as always. Okay. Use a small brush, spin your brush to manage how much paint is on there. And then you can do these small vein-like details, kind of like Ys alternating from the left to the right side. And I want you to do this detail once you're done, painting your leaves, of course. Me, I'm happy with the colors. So just find a style here that works for you. Just go with it. You can use a really fine brush. These can be big lines or little lines. It doesn't matter. I'm just trying to do them a little smaller, but it doesn't always happen. So I'm alternating from the left to the right. And you can see it just gives these leaves a little bit of really beautiful texture on top. So you're not covering up all of your hard work. You're just, that coloring from behind is really just starting to come through. And it really gives these leaves a little bit like more of that earthy look. And the green, Linda, to your point, the green really adds that like nice, bright, like freshness, in my opinion, of that leaf.
Yeah, it looks really nice.
And I'm just gonna go nice and slow. I have all these leaves. I'm so curious on how many leaves, if you want to use the chat window, how many leaves ended up being on your painting tonight? I'm sure I'm not the only one that has like a couple extras, but maybe some of you had really big leaves initially. Yeah, the green is really fun. 2 leaves, nice. So some of you, yeah, the green is a really nice addition. If folks haven't tried that, just dust a little green on the bottom near the yellow. It's really fun. I can always go in and add more if I wanted to. Miriam has 2 medium size and 1 small one. Nice. 1 and getting bigger. Deborah's is getting bigger. That happens, Deborah. No big deal. So we're just having fun. One of the nice things about tonight's class is we have a really simple composition, but we're taking the time to go and play with all these little details on top, which is really nice. It's really nice. And we could easily spend 2 hours playing with all these details, but I wanted to do just enough for tonight's class to get you going. And many participants in our classes will keep painting even after the class is ended, just to do final touches, even, pick it up tomorrow or the next day. So don't feel rushed to feel like you need to complete this tonight. These paintings are yours, and we always love seeing them. So I hope that everybody's enjoying themselves so far. And be sure to join us next month if you're interested. So I'm adding some of these brown stem likes in here. And it's really coming together. You can really see the highlighting. I'm going to probably come in and add a little bit more heavier white around my leaves for that reflection piece. In the inspiration, it was much more pronounced. So there's that. And then I might add a couple of like white dots. There's a couple like white star like forms and a couple of white dots, which are really quite cute. That I might do as well. So everybody's working on, not finishing touches, but like additional detail work in the next 15 minutes or so. If the inside of your blue is dry on the inside of your flowers, you can take a small brush and a little bit of black paint, or even like a watery black paint, and add a little bit of shading.
So Megan, we have a question about whether you'll be doing a Halloween theme next month.
Ooh,
Yeah.
let me see what I chose. Probably. Let me see. I can't remember what I selected. Oh, here it is. I'm doing a pumpkin theme next month. So I have white pumpkins right now selected with like a nice peachy background, reddish peachy background, but you could easily turn those pumpkins into jack-o'-lanterns. But there's beautiful flowers kind of like tucked in front of the pumpkins. So it's very elegant, but you could easily turn it into more Halloween spooky.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. Yeah, next month is going to be really fun. I'm just putting in a little bit of shading around. Yeah, and it's nice with pumpkins. You could do white pumpkins, you could do orange pumpkins. Sometimes in classes, folks do like one of each. And if you wanted to, turn into jack-o'-lanterns, you could absolutely do that on your own. 100%. And somebody's asking about the date of the next class. The date of the next class is October 9th, Wednesday, October 9th at 6 p.m. And you can check out the sign up. I'm not sure if it's live or not, but we can check that out. The sign up live or not. So I'm just adding a little bit of shading on the inside of these hearts. It's kind of a greenish black. So if I don't like it, guess what? I can paint right over it. Just using my finger to kind of dab it around a little bit. And for anyone new, I hope that you're enjoying yourself. For our existing folks who have joined before, again, I'm so glad you're here. Hope everybody's having a great time. We always love having you join us. Every month's a little bit different, so if you have any special requests, definitely let us know. Linda and the team at AARP New Hampshire, they do such a great job coordinating the events and sharing, most importantly, sharing the resources for you, just to kind of have that extra info in your back pocket if you need it. They're a wonderful team, and it's a wonderful organization that supports, your needs. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more white around some of my. I want to have a little bit more contrast. So this is where in the class you kind of just lean back in your chair and you say, well, what else do I want to add and where? Some of you may say, Megan, I am done. I am happy. I've enjoyed this experience. Some of you may say, well, there's something missing. I'm not sure what it is. So just know wherever you're at is totally fine. For me, I'm just adding in a little bit of extra white contrast around. Some of you may have already done a better job of me of adding more of this initially, but I just wanted a little bit of extra white here around some of these leaves. A little bit more of a bold white per se. And if there's any particular questions, things that I can answer for you to kind of get you over the finishing line for tonight's class, don't hesitate to use the chat window. I'm happy to answer those for you. But most importantly, I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I'll add a couple of like the little white dots in just a minute. I'm just adding a little bit of extra white first around my leaves. I really want them to stand out a little bit more. If you have any stems, they have some of these rounded like textures kind of around the stems on the bottom. So if you wanted to add any like lines around your stems, you could. If anybody wants to add some cute little white dots, you can use a fine point of your brush and you can do little white dots. So I might do a little cluster of like a 1, 2, 3 up here. You could do like a 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3. These are just kind of like maybe bubbles on the surface of the water. You can use your imagination here. So those little bubbles are little white dots. You could do a cluster of a 1, 2, 3 or a 1, 2, maybe a 1. Absolutely.
Megan, someone is asking what size brush you're using for the white.
I want to say it's like a 1 or a 2. It's just a small round tip brush. And I'm just doing clusters of 1 or a 1, 2. And again, everybody's going to kind of add in as much water effect as they wish. I can make the veins, of my leaf a little darker if I wanted to stand out a little bit more. It's just about doing as much or as little as you wish. This is a personal preference. For me, I'm making sure I have enough white contrast around my leaves. the inspiration doesn't have this, but you could do a little bit of like a white outline on the corner of one of your hearts. So you can see a little bit of the heart shape. Kind of like outlining one of those little corners. I'll bring that a little closer so you can see it. I just put like a little bit of like a white line on the inside of one of my hearts. Like it's like a little bit of a lighted reflection off the water. Yeah. And I'm just doing a really light hand. The softer your hand, the smaller or lighter your brush strokes could be. And again, don't hesitate to add a little bit of water to your white paint if you want a lighter kind of approach to the white. I know I might send this one in. I love sending artwork to our friends at AARP New Hampshire. They might like this one. We did a Mount Washington last year. It was really fun. And I sent it to them as a gift. It was really fun. All right. Well, I hope everyone's had a wonderful time. We're still painting away. So I'm just going to pause and I'll check in with the chat. I'm going to let mine dry and think about anything else I want to add to it or not. You could always add some more dark contrast to the corners. That's something I see that I could do on mine. But as you're painting away, let me know. I can support you again with any finishing touches. With a little black paint and a little bit of blue, I can add some more kind of darker contrasts in the corners if I wanted to. Totally optional. I could use my finger to smudge it in a little bit. Just kind of draws your eye into the middle. So I see I made it really kind of dark and cloudy down here. I'm just going to show you what it looks like. If you don't like it, you don't have to. Sometimes for these classes, we use our fingers to smudge. It's quite fun, liberating. I'm just doing like a little bit like of a watered black, and I'm just kind of smudging the edges. See how the eye just kind of brought all those right in. Absolutely optional. I'll just do a little bit of that up here just to show you what it looks like. It's just doing a little bit of that watery black, and I'm just kind of smudging my finger around. And I'm just kind of coming in between these little white bubbles just to see.
We have lots of people who are saying how much fun this is.
Oh, good. I'm so glad you loved it, everybody. I want to thank you for joining. I hope to see you all again soon. And definitely tell a friend, bring a friend next time. They can be remote too. You guys could do it from your own. You could do it together, or you could do it from your own homes. Linda, we have so many folks that join these classes that I have one lady in particular. I'm not going to name her name. She does it with 3 or 4 friends, like for events.
Oh,
And
nice.
it's so much fun. And she sends me pictures after and of all their artwork. She might even be on. I didn't look, but it's
awesome.
so fun. It's so fun whether you're doing it alone or not, but it's always fun to know what your options are. And you could always add in a little bit of, if you want to add a little bit of extra contrast, into your water with a little bit of the dark, you could. Absolutely up to you on how much or how little you want to do. Sometimes folks are nervous to add a little bit more once they get going, or even towards the end, they might just say they're done. So if you're at a point where you feel like you're almost done, then you just don't worry about that. You don't worry. But most importantly, I want to thank you all for being here. And again, a big thanks to AARP New Hampshire for having us. We would not be here without their support. I hope everyone joins us for the next class. And most importantly, enjoyed the time with us tonight. It's a pleasure to be here with you to lead the experience.
Well, thank you. I'm going to ask one more thing before we sign off. We had a request from someone if you would repost the picture.
Yes.
Just because it's way up in the chat and they weren't sure where it was.
I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Of course. All right. Thank you, Terry. Great to see you. Thanks everyone for joining. I'll hang out for a few minutes if folks have questions. We have plenty of time. I would always love giving folks just the opportunity to paint at their own pace. We could have easily spent, you know, over 2 hours on this, but we took a little bit more of a simplified approach to it. And you can kind of lean back in your chair and figure out what else you may want to add. I could add in a little bit more punchy red maybe to our leaves, but this is what artists do. They kind of wait and they evaluate their artwork and they let it evolve. I'm going to add a little bit more bright red to the top of these leaves. How about that? A little bit more punchy red just to the outer edge of these leaves where I have that dark red right now. It's going to bring in a little bit of the brighter color. So again, you get to kind of pick and choose what tones and what hues of colors you use for the classes, but I'm here to give you ideas, but always follow your gut and use your own favorite colors.
Someone who may have joined late is asking what color the veins are.
Mine are brown. Yep. They could be darker, but mine are a brown color. Yep. And I'm just adding a little bit more punchy red around the edges, the outside edges, the inner outside edge. And you can let it dry and you can come back to it. I always love painting on acrylic, like canvas boards or paper, because I always love framing the art and hanging it in my studio. So you could either paint on canvas, you know, that are, you know, wooden boards, frames, or you can do paper or another type of platform, so you can hang it in your home. But it's always fun to, you know, be proud of what you do and, you know, don't take it too seriously. But what a fun class tonight. I hope that everyone had a nice time. Let me see here if the October class is posted. I believe it is. Let's see here. As folks are wrapping up. AARP. Awesome. Looks like it is painted, or it is posted, and I have the link right here for you. And there's the inspiration. I'll post the link in the chat window, unless someone already did, but I have that right here for you. I would definitely be sure to bookmark the event space so you all can see additional events that the AARP New Hampshire team shares. They have a wonderful calendar for you. Thank you so much, Patty and Billy and Margaret. Ziggy, I hope you had fun. Deborah, leaves are hard, Deborah. We have to be kind to ourselves here. Barbara, hope to see you in the future. Awesome. Lori, thank you so much for joining. Patty and Connie, thank you very much. All right, my painting's a little crooked there. And then you end with a messy paint space. That means you had a nice time. If you're a little messy in front of you, that's a good thing, right? Unless some of you don't like the mess, but. Linda, thank you again for being a wonderful partner in executing this event tonight. Yeah, Linda, thank you. Debbie, thank you all so much. I will repost the inspiration in the chat window again for the link for the next class. I'm posting back in the chat window for you.
Thank you.